Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Eddie Rodriguez is the founder and host of Brain Health, an educational YouTube channel dedicated to sharing what he and his family have learned and are learning in caregiving for his father, diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease. Eddie is an advocate for metabolic neurology, metabolic psychiatry, and cognitive health strategies like the Bredesen Protocol for the prevention and treatment of neurological and psychiatric disorders. With extensive experience in commercial financing, corporate and sales process consulting, and leadership development, he combines his professional expertise with a passion for transforming how mental and neurological conditions are framed and treated going forward. He is also the board president of Metabolic Collective, a new 501c3 whose mission is to accelerate the real world adoption of metabolic therapies, especially ketogenic protocols for serious mental illness and neurological disorders by building a global, peer led grassroots movement. Eddie Rodriguez, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
All right. Thank you so much for having me, Casey. Appreciate it.
It's absolutely an honor to host you. I know you're in the Boston area, and your football team just made it to the Super Bowl and unfortunately didn't win, but that's okay. But also it was the same weekend, right? Super Bowl weekend that you got to hang out with some of our friends in the mental health space.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We had a board meeting that same weekend, and we got hit with a good amount of snow that weekend, and then we had the Patriots game, the Super Bowl. That was a very packed weekend, but I was happy all around with the results there. And even though the Pats didn't win, I think they exceeded all of our expectations over here in Massachusetts, so we'll take it.
Absolutely. I think other fans of other teams out there would say the Patriots have had enough Super Bowl
Right.
victories in their day, and we need to spread the love around a little bit. But
That's
yeah, that's
it.
super cool. I know we're skipping way ahead in the story. We're going to go back and talk about
Yeah.
your journey and everything that you've learned. But I do want to ask you about that weekend. Like, tell us if you don't mind, like what the purpose of the weekend meeting was, how it went, what some of the highlights were, and what are some of the things that you accomplished as an organization.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a really great question. The way I'll start with answering that is I'll talk a little bit about Metabolic Collective, which is this new independent 501c3 nonprofit whose mission is to accelerate the real world adoption of metabolic therapies, especially ketogenic protocols for serious mental illness and neurological disorders by building this global peer-led grassroots movement. Like you said, you know, what we're working on doing is building scalable community-driven support and advocacy so that people don't have to figure out metabolic psychiatry and metabolic neurology alone. And we're doing it in a way that's very analogous to Alcoholics Anonymous, having this engine for um, coming together and creating education and community. So a couple of things: metabolic neurology, metabolic psychiatry. I just want to kind of break that down. I know a lot of people in your audience and your listeners, your viewers are pretty well versed in all of this, but simply, nutritional and lifestyle interventions we've seen have been so effective in so many different mental disorders, brain disorders, neurological disorders, and that's what we're really talking about. Um, so, talking about that weekend, something that all of our efforts, including that weekend, were really rooted in are these core beliefs of number one, recovery, even often remission, which we're seeing from conditions like bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, major depression, OCD, PTSD, dementia, Parkinson's, uh, are possible for many people using metabolic ketogenic interventions, as seen in a recent growing wave of trials, studies, case reports, and series, as well as anecdotal N of ones. Number two, lived experience, what we kind of call experts by experience, um, are really the most powerful accelerants for awareness, adoption, and long-term adherence. I know we have a common friend in Robin Dobbins, which is a great example of that and a great testimony to that. Connection and purpose, number three, are huge for us because they themselves are forms of metabolic medicine. And we know we've seen that loneliness and isolation, which kind of come hand in hand with some of these diagnoses and disorders, they make the disorders worse. So if we can come together and support each other collectively, it strengthens us, it reinforces our progress, as well as accelerates the pace at which these metabolic therapies are embraced by others, and really accelerates what we see as it becoming integrated into standard of care and offered as first-line treatments at scale. So, okay, all of that. The purpose specifically of that weekend was for us to really identify the key objectives for the remainder of the year so that we could um, get the measurable movement that we'd like to see in creating these support groups and really disseminating this information as widely as possible to others who may have been diagnosed with some sort of mental illness disorder or neurological disorder. They're looking for answers. They may not have had the best answers from standard of care. And they're looking to do something that's within their control and their influence, which, Casey, has so much to do with lifestyle interventions like diet, exercise, how we approach sleep, how we approach stress management, how we come together socially in community. Um, so that's what we were really doing that week. And now we're several weeks out, from the time that now that we're recording, and we're hitting the ground running, and we're working on those things.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing all of that. The thing that I love and appreciate the most about all of that is how concise everything is. I remember when, yes, mutual friend Robin Dobbins, I hate giving her any more airtime that she already gets on this show, but we're gonna have to. Like when she was first getting involved and we were talking about it, I'd heard of Collective but didn't know that much about it. And I was kind of asking her in the beginning, like, what's the elevator pitch? What is it that you guys actually do? And you would have needed like a very big elevator down to like Mordor or something. Like it was like a 30-minute kind of pitch of like we think we do this, blah blah blah. But it was not very concise because something like this has not really ever really been done the way that you're doing it. And sure, we've seen certain organizations kind of come and go, and I just think this is a really great step to have a place where people can go and connect and figure out how also they can share their message moving forward, which is exactly what you guys are doing.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. You're right. It's something that, because it's a little bit of uncharted waters, it has been challenging to figure out. There are so many things that touch what our mission is, so it's hard to articulate it in a concise way, but we're getting better at that. And I think part of that is because we're getting better at prioritizing what is going to make the biggest difference at this present moment, because the sequence at which we allocate that effort and that focus is really the most important thing here. Because I know, Casey, just from being a fan of Boundless Body and everything that you do and other influencers in our space, we all know that there are a lot of gaps and deficits with standard of care and with healthcare uh, as they are right now. And we just want to see people get better, no matter what the diagnosis is, no matter. We just want improved health outcomes for our family, for our friends, for ourselves.
Friend, well said. I really appreciate that, and yeah, I've really enjoyed kind of your progression and how concise things are getting, like we said before. So thank you for that. We'll definitely be talking a little bit more about Collective down the road, but let's go back now and tell your story. We mentioned in the introduction all the things that you do for your day job, and I didn't see anything in there about being an expert in mental health or an expert in nutrition or an expert on YouTube, which you certainly are, content creation. How did you get into all of this?
Oh boy. Yeah, I tell you, so this all starts with my dad started to have some drastic cognitive decline in the year 2018. And long story short, he got diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's in 2018 at the age of 53. Um, Medically disabled. He was the uh, primary income provider, primary health insurance provider for my mother and my brother, who was 15 years old at the time. So it was something that it was a challenge at the time. We had to figure a lot of things out, and ultimately, we had to go through the proper channels like everyone does. And the proper channels for my dad's specific diagnosis, as other people could probably relate to, there wasn't a whole lot there. for support, and there wasn't a whole lot there for some sort of path forward. It was get your affairs in order. Um, he doesn't qualify for Medicaid. You know, sorry, you have to figure that piece out. And let's do a couple of labs. You know, let's maybe do a B12, a TSH, a basic metabolic panel, and let's rule a couple of things out. Here's a medication, maybe. When he gets worse in 6 months, come back. So naturally, I just got to seeing, look, I respected everything that I heard, and we got to work on getting affairs in order. But we also started looking, started looking for other answers. And in searching for other answers, to see how dare us, right? To see if there was a way that things could be improved. Um, we came across metabolic therapies, and we're seeing that people are making improvements here and other people are having other bigger improvements there. And what are they doing? The common denominator was coming down to these metabolic therapies, diet, exercise, stress management, sleep. And I found what was called the Bredesen Protocol, and now it's better known as RECODE, the RECODE protocol, the Reversal Cognitive Decline Protocol, innovated by Dr. Dale Bredesen. And we got my dad started on that in late 2018, and we saw some just amazing improvements. And um, he had in about a year and a half, he had uh, increased his cognitive scores, his measurable cognitive scores on the MOCA there by almost 40%, which is unheard of. And
Wow.
neurologist, his initial neurologist said that was going to be impossible. Um, and we learned a lot. We unlearned a lot of other things that we thought we knew, and we kind of transformed our own health and we transformed our own diets because we were practicing the Bredesen protocol with my dad. Um, but fast forward, 2020 comes and COVID comes and the alpha variant knocks us all on our butts, and it hit my dad pretty hard. Um, and that created a whole nother set of challenges and a whole new set of new poor prognoses. And we continued with these metabolic therapies. We continued with the Bredesen protocol. And today, he's still punching away, and he's defied all the prognoses that his neurologists have given him over these years. And I credit that to these metabolic therapies. And um, I I'm connected with a lot of people, just in this community of people who are working on the same protocols, working on these same interventions, and integrating them into their life. And one thing, and you're probably saying the same thing to yourself, is like, man, I wish that this was just standard knowledge. I wish that this was something that every family knew about and was working on. And I wish that it was something that we had been working on a decade ago, before my dad got sick. Um, so I'm really passionate about sharing that information, and um, how I got into the whole brain health thing of sharing it online. When COVID when COVID came, a lot of people with different comorbidities, as probably in your circle, they suffered through that, and a lot of people came down with different things, and in my community, unfortunately, a lot of people, uh, a relatively high number of people started getting cognitive decline. And I started getting phone calls saying, "What is your dad doing?" Right? Like, what do you got? People didn't really care too much until COVID came and started creating a lot of health crises in other people's homes. And they started to ask, what are you doing? And um, what's the diet? And what do I eat? And what do I don't? And this and that. So I just got the phone calls, just helping people. And finally, enough people just kept saying, I write things down and I get confused and then I got to go back, and you should really put this somewhere where I could just go back and revisit it, and it should be accessible to others. And I kept hearing that. So finally, beginning of 2024, I just started my YouTube channel, and it was just sharing what we were learning along the way of caregiving for my father and helping him manage the Bredesen Protocol. So now it's been a couple of years, and like I told my wife, I was hesitant to start doing it at first because, um, now I've got three kids under the age of 5, helping my dad, caregiving for him. I got a full-time job. So it's a lot of work, but like I told my wife, if I'm gonna do it, I'm just gonna do it, and I'm gonna start it. I'm not gonna stop, and I'm just gonna share everything we're learning along the way. So that's where we are, and hopefully it continues to add value to people, and hopefully it helps people um, bring some of these actionable strategies into their homes and into their loved ones' lives. And it seems like people have taken value from that, and I'm grateful for that. Um, so yeah, that's what I'm doing. And honestly, it's helped me. It's helped us because the community has grown. And then there's other people that are doing something that we haven't even looked into yet. And say, have you tried this? And have you tried red light therapy? Or have you tried 40 hertz? Or, so it's become this community of people sharing, little strategies that a randomized control trial has not been established yet. But we know that if we wait for every intervention to go through a randomized control trial, um, we'll be waiting decades. So I'm just happy that uh, we've been able to connect with each other and educate each other. And then that kind of translates over to what we hope to see on an amplified basis for Metabolic Collective.
Yeah. Dude, that's absolutely amazing. Your channel is fantastic for two reasons. First of all, the information that you put out there is amazing. I love the style that you do it in, but also the production value is incredible. Like your movies look amazing. You're going to be so disappointed when you see this land on YouTube and it's a raw Zoom cut with just a very simple intro and outro cut.
Yeah.
You do a great job, and it's really awesome to find that information. I want to kind of talk about your dad's story a little bit more. What was the nature of your relationship growing up?
Yeah, that's a funny one, man. No one's ever asked me that, but I'll tell you, me and my dad, my dad he was a tough love guy, disciplinarian, and and we clashed a lot, but always knew that he was coming from a really loving place. He didn't have a dad growing up, so he he really took that job seriously, and he prioritized. I'd say he prioritized building a strong constitution in me um, over other things. And he was he got me into martial arts at a very young age, pushed me there, and he would push me in other areas. So he was a pusher, and he would push me until, as I got older, of course, there's always that opportunity to start branching out, right? Um, him getting sick, and before he got diagnosed in 2018, we have a strong family history, and I'll take you back to that. So not only do we have a strong family history, but we are part of the lucky genetic lottery of point 0, so 0.5% of all Alzheimer's cases are this genetic, what they call a deterministic gene called presenilin 1. And everybody's kind of heard about ApoE4 lately. And ApoE4 gets you that heightened predisposition to develop Alzheimer's if the conditions are wrong, eating the wrong things and you're creating a lot of inflammation. Um, we won the lucky lottery for that one too. We've got ApoE4s. But presenilin 1, up to this point, there's only about 300 families or so that have been cataloged in the world. There's definitely more if we got tested. But it's known as deterministic. It's known as an earlier onset, anywhere between mid 40s to mid 50s. Person becomes disabled. It moves very quickly. So late onset Alzheimer's, a person can be forgetful for 15 years until it starts affecting motor function and other key um, uh, uh, life activities of daily living sort of functions. Um, Early onset Alzheimer's can be 8 years. Um, Familial early onset Alzheimer's, it can move very quickly from the point you get by the point that you're being diagnosed, it has become advanced. Um, and it can move very quickly from there. It could be 4 years, it could be 6 years. So my aunt had passed away at the age of 57, his sister, um, the year prior to him getting diagnosed. My grandfather, his father, um, very similar situation. My great grandfather and his brothers. So we have this family history, and that was always kind of in the looming in the background in my childhood because I had to visit my family members. Um, and I think my dad he's never told me this, but I think he had that sense of urgency when I was growing up. So he thought to himself, he never got tested to see if he had the gene or not. Um, but he just figured um, if he did, he needed to toughen me up before the storm came. And now I understand that. So I think hopefully that answers your question.
That does. Yeah. I realized it's kind of a vulnerable question to answer. And I hope are okay sharing that level of
Of
detail. But
course.
yeah, thank you for sharing that. Always a tricky thing to talk about. I was kind of wondering, how close you must have been to be his primary caretaker, one of his primary caretakers at the time, because we know that with mental disorders, especially with Alzheimer's, like it's hard for the person that has Alzheimer's, but it's almost way harder for the people that are around those people and trying to take care of them and seeing what is going on with people they love.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. No, it's a great question. It's 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 a good place to go because to answer this other question, I've been caregiving for my dad. My mom is MVP, most valuable player. She's like in the trenches on a second to second basis. Um, she's been so compliant with everything that it's a lot of moving parts with the Bredesen Protocol. And she's like the head chef and she's the head ops manager and she makes sure that we do the schedule so I've got to work and thankfully, I set it up so I work from home and now we all live together. So they have their own in-law suite and I'm checking in every hour, every couple hours, and helping as much as I can. But you know, my mom is that rock, and she's another one who's just her mindset has always been just a fierce, resilient mindset. Um, so uh, the situation with my dad, him going down for several years, showing cognitive deficits for several years before he got diagnosed, it brought me back closer to home because I knew that my mom wasn't going to be able to shoulder everything. So my brother was very young at the time. And it was my brother who was the one who was telling us to check on my dad because it was my brother who was being driven to practices and everything else. And he was spending more time with my dad than any of us. Um, so for him at a young age to kind of nudge us in the shoulder and say, check on dad. Um, so I will say that I've had to do a lot of work in this process, but it's been a team. My mom, my brother, my wife have really been that main team around my dad. And I think everybody who goes through something like this needs a team. I feel for those individual caregivers that they're the only ones because it is a lot of work and it is a psychological toll as well.
Got it. Well, thank you for sharing that. Let's go back to the hospital where the diagnosis is made. Let's go back to 2018, and I'm going to magic wand this situation. I'm going to give Metabolic Collective exactly what they want. I'm just going to say this is going to be options. So the doctor is going to present you with an option A, and the doctor's going to present you with an option B. And again, there's no way to know. You were there, but it's been a long time. You've learned a lot since then. But if you could try to take yourself back to that spot, and I'm just going to say, the doctor sits you down and says, okay, option A is this is going to get worse. He has the gene. Here's the pill. Come see me in 6 months. Or option B is you change everything you eat. You do the red lights. You do the saunas. You work on movement. Are you going through all these different steps of potential things that you could do on the Bredesen Protocol, which we can talk about in a second? But it's all these different things, and maybe he'll have a chance to improve. What would you do being presented that information? Because on the one hand, it's like, well, this doesn't have very good prognosis, but like there's like nothing to do. I don't have to change anything. You're telling me I've got to completely change the way that I eat. Everything that you're describing now, wifey has to cook all the food and be this huge team 24/7. Like, how do you think you would process that if you were offered those two options?
Yeah. It's a great question. I think that you kind of said it, right? It's like door number one stinks, and unfortunately, door number one is the only thing that's being offered right now. Door number two, it's a lot of work and no guarantee, but we've got some really great research, and Dr. Bredesen's last randomized controlled trial just wrapped up, and it's in peer review right now. So it's not, like fully sealed yet, but so far we're hearing it's his best study yet. And every study since 2014 has just seen some tremendous results. So, but to be one of those outliers that are growing every day, it takes a lot of work. For me, going back, I would have said yes, but of course, it's my dad who's got to make the choice, right? And that goes back to, he agreed to do this, which I'm very grateful for. And there are those who will not agree, and I've heard that countless times where I get the call and somebody says, I read all of Bredesen's books and I'm doing it for myself for prevention. My dad is at mild cognitive impairment already or early Alzheimer's, and he won't put the Coca-Cola down, or he won't stop eating sugar, or he just doesn't want to do it. And I get it, because by that point it's very challenging. What I would say is, if I could wave a magic wand, standard of care would make everyone screen for what Dr. Bredesen calls the cognoscopy. We know that we got to do the colonoscopy at 50, but we start screening for the cognoscopy at 45. And we start to really test, where are we cognitively? And here are some labs that can kind of show us what's going on under the hood. And let's start working on that stuff now. And you and I, Casey, know that without making it too complicated, if we're in our mid-40s and we start optimizing our diet, our exercise, how we stress manage, our sleep, I mean, geez, what's not possible? We see it all the time. And you train people in this, and you see it firsthand. So I wish more of that was going on at the neurologist's office, at the primary care provider, and someone like yourself is working hand in hand with these clinicians as a more wraparound, holistic approach to real health care, as opposed to managing sick care. So I kind of took a circuitous route. Hopefully that answers your question.
Absolutely. No, I really appreciate that. And there's another thing in the story that I really don't want to pass up. You mentioned a 40% improvement in a particular score. I don't know that I really considered not only what a big change that is, but also what that practically actually looks like, until I started getting into the work of Dr. Mary Newport. Of course, her husband also diagnosed with an early onset Alzheimer's. He's got the famous pictures of drawing the clock
Yep.
that looks like an absolute disaster. And then, a few time intervals later, after being on not even a ketogenic diet, but adding ketones to the diet, how much
Yeah.
improvement there was. When she said her husband improved, it wasn't just like, oh, he remembers more things. It's like, no, he's becoming himself again. He's telling jokes again. He's playing games with us again. So can you compare and contrast the dad that started with the terrible score and the dad that had the 40% improvement? Because I think we could miss that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, you're taking me back. So, and Dr. Mary Newport was an early hero of ours. My uncle had sent me um, her book before I even found Bredesen and kind of got me down that track. And her husband Steve's story is something that we worked on modeling. So the in fact, it's the same test that they had to do. It's the MoCA. There's the MMSE and the MoCA, the Montreal Cognitive Test. And when my dad started, he had trouble with the entire test. About a year and a half, he had jumped up his score 38%. But like, what did that look like? Because something's on paper, but like, what did that look like in life? Um, when he first started, he could really no longer drive. He could drive, but I mean, to get from point A to point B, that should be 10 minutes. It was going to take him like 30, right? Because he was going to take every left turn, right turn, because he'd forget where he'd be going, and then he'd get back on track. And so at that point, he really shouldn't be driving. Um, and he was muscling his way. So we're talking about my father's a brick and block mason. Okay. So we're talking about a guy who had to lift, heavy blocks and bricks and had to do it several stories up, climbing scaffolding, you know, uh, buckets of mortar. And he was trying to muscle his way back onto jobs because he was like, I can do this, right? And not understanding the deficits and kind of putting other people in danger as well. And thankfully, everything was okay. We convinced him it's time to retire, right? Um, but all of that, and I think this is something that a lot of people have to think about, all of that created um, this uh, internal isolation in him because he knew things were not right and he was continuing to try to prove to himself that he could do things. And when it wouldn't work out the way he wanted, there was embarrassment. So there's the psychological toll of that. So at the beginning of his journey, he's very embarrassed and very down on himself, like a lot of people get. Especially when they're told there's nothing that's gonna improve, and you just gotta kind of wait it out. And of course, he's got his sister in the back of his mind. He's got his dad. So he's got family history. Um, but what was exciting is, especially when we change, like when we started really changing the diet, that's when he started reporting he's getting more energy. He's more clear. He can understand things better. He can read again. Just a lot of the same things that Steve Newport was reporting. But the coolest thing was confidence was coming back. So confidence in himself and the willingness to joke around and the willingness um, to stop being at the periphery of the room and start inserting himself and asserting himself back in. My dad was a big jokester, a big prankster, so he was always very serious and tough, and then he could flip a switch and just be a prankster and just um, make you laugh in stitches. And so like that personality, came back, and I think the coolest thing was this was right before COVID, the storm that COVID came. It was December of was it 2019 at that point, and so he wasn't driving. He was never like medic. We never like took his license away or anything like that. But he just didn't want to drive, and we didn't really want him to drive. And at the time, I was like 30 minutes away, and he calls me up and he's like, "Hey, I'm driving to the mall right now. I'm gonna go pick up my watch at this store." And I'm panicking. I'm like, "Bah, dude, what? No, go back home. Like, come on. Like stay safe." And he's like, "No, I feel great. I'm gonna do this." And I'm talking to him on the phone, and he's on the phone while driving, which is just like nuts. But I'm just talking him through the and he did exactly what he said he was gonna do. And he came back home and he had the watch and he was so proud of himself. And that was like, that was just a tremendous testimony to what the body's capable of when you can provide it what it needs. So that was cool. That hopefully that paints a picture.
That paints an amazing picture. And I hope moments like that make it into the conversation when this does become frontline, so that when you're telling somebody, like, hey, option B is a whole shit ton of work that you've got to do.
Yeah.
Here's what some people has happened. Here's a few things that have happened for other people. Here's some case studies. Now you can decide, do you want to do the work or not? That's amazing. I love that story. Thank you for sharing that experience. Tell us a little bit about the Bredesen Protocol. Do we still call it that, or are we calling it Recode now? I'm aware
I,
through your videos of
yeah.
the kind of change. And can you tell us a little bit about it and what it involves?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when it comes to the Bredesen protocol, I still call it the Bredesen protocol. Dr. Dale Bredesen is one of the best people I've ever met. And I'm not the only person to say that. He's extremely brilliant, but he's a humble person and really does care. Um, and I think things have shifted away from him because he doesn't want it. He doesn't want the attention on him, right? So I still call it the Bredesen protocol. It's the reversal, the recode protocol, reversal cognitive decline protocol, either same thing. But okay, what does it entail? Well, the way I'll preface this is what we all learned, and I'm sure you've heard and you've been barraged, for years with news headlines, and you're just clicking through and you're just trying to watch the um what what's the is it the tusks with the mammoths now? Is
There
that
we
what it is?
go. Yeah, the Utah Mammoth tussed up.
That's what it is. The Utah man. So you try to switch on something, you try to watch, and there's always a commercial. There's much less of these commercials nowadays, if you probably noticed. But you get these commercials for these medications for Alzheimer's, and they're all targeting amyloid. And we all heard it's always amyloid, amyloid, amyloid. And amyloid is part of the picture. It's a very important part. But what we were taught is like, okay, amyloid is causing the Alzheimer's. That amyloid, like we got to get it out of there. We got to get it out of the brain. Um, and what Bredesen and his team really figured out was that the amyloid was more the smoke and not the fire. And for a long time, a lot of the focus was going towards amyloid and trying to remove it. And they have been successful in removing it in some people, but it doesn't improve cognition. So what gives? So another way to look at it is like amyloid is the firefighter and not the arsonist. And then we find out like the work of Dr. Rudy Tanzi has figured out there's these benefits to amyloid. The body is producing amyloid on purpose to protect the brain from other root cause triggers that have not yet been identified that are causing inflammation and insults to the brain. So now the million dollar question is, what are those root cause triggers that are inducing amyloid production and tau production in the brain and causing the brain to downsize its energetic network because they thought, oh, this brain tissue is just going dead. It's not, it's going dormant. A good way to look at it is like in the winter, you get a rhododendron bush, and that rhododendron bush, like all the leaves just because I got one. I use this example because I got one outside my office window, and all the leaves just scrunch up. But then the spring comes out and it has all the sun and the water and the heat that it needs, and they start to bloom back out. And that's what the neurons are doing. The neurons are downsizing their synaptic network, and not allowing you to access things that the brain does not uh, view as mission critical because it needs to keep your heart pumping and all these other things. So, what the Bredesen protocol it really does is number one, there's the testing. It's an expanded testing to see what are all the root cause triggers for cognitive decline. It's going to be different for everybody. So, um, some of the main numbers that we want to look at, insulin resistance. Dr. Bredesen has found that insulin resistance is the primary driver of cognitive decline. If we cannot access, if we cannot use glucose for energy in the neurons, we're going to have a downsizing of the synaptic network. It happens to a lot of us, which is why ketosis and ketogenic therapies are so powerful for providing an additional fuel. So that's a big one. And then some of the common other insults that his team has found for over a decade, there's viral infections, parasitic infections, bacterial infections, or fungal infections that have not been tested for and addressed. People can be carrying around Lyme disease and not know it. People can be carrying candida in their guts because they too much antibiotics and they don't know it. Or other people might have mold toxicity from their home, which is a big one we're finding, and a contributor to my dad's. Um, and then other things like heavy metals. Imagine if standard of care, you go in and you start saying, I'm having some cognitive issues. I'm having some brain fog. I'm forgetting why I'm going to the. What if we were testing for these things 15 years before it gets so bad that now you got to be disabled from work? So heavy metals like mercury, arsenic, cadmium, lead, you'd be surprised how many of us are carrying that stuff and it accumulates. And in occupational, like people like my dad who worked in an occupation exposed to that kind of stuff are at a higher prevalence of these kinds of neurological disorders. Parkinson's, we see Parkinson's with paraquat and glyphosate and a lot of other organophosphate. There's a large number of people in the agricultural field with Parkinson's. Okay. So um, it's testing for these things, but the core pillars of what you practice on a daily basis to get that body, to get your brain and body into a place where you're promoting healing as opposed to downsizing, it's number one, diet and getting into a state of ketosis and then working towards metabolic flexibility so that you can both use glucose and ketones. Um, and then exercise, moving our bodies for so many of the benefits. And you know this better than anybody else. I don't have to go into any further on that. Sleep. Uh, Dr. Bredesen has found that so many people who have to end up on the protocol have undiagnosed sleep apnea. And we used to think that sleep apnea was kind of only associated with people with a certain BMI that were obese. But now it's statistically looking like the majority of people with sleep apnea, it has nothing to do with obesity. So that's something that it has been, really knocking people's cognition. And then the last thing is stress management. If we're eating ultra processed foods and we're not getting good sleep, and we're stressed out because of work, and we've got screens that are stimulating all us all the time, and we have no downtime, and we don't have any parasympathetic tone. That's going to worsen cognition too. So, like on a daily basis, we have to work through our protocol, our unique protocol for diet, exercise, sleep, and stress management. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And with insulin resistance being that core piece, I would assume for a majority of people, obviously, like you said, every case is a little bit different. Every person, every situation is a little bit different, but nutrition probably has to be the core piece that moves the needle the most out of any of the other things. Is that correct?
That's it. It's
Yeah.
and the inverse of that is also true, which is you could do all the other stuff and you could red light therapy yourself into the living daylights. But if your nutrition's not there, nothing else moves the needle.
Gonna be tough. Yeah, gonna be tough. Okay, I understand both points of view. And we'll hear somebody like a Dr. Chris Palmer, which just beloved, amazing dude, saying that, doing a ketogenic diet is tough. It's really, really hard. A lot of people can't do it. I get that, and I understand that argument. I also hear arguments on the other side, like Nicole Laurent, who will say something like, "What you are going through, what you are doing, it's already hard. Doing a diet is not any harder than what you're doing now." So I kind of like to lean more towards the Nicole Laurent side of things and say, like, yeah, this is going to suck. You're going to have to cut back on foods that or your staples, that Coke you mentioned earlier. Like, my grandma had to stop buying candy and bringing it in the house to reverse her prediabetes, and she did it. So in your
Nice.
experience, in your personal experience, um how hard was it? How hard is it currently to do that protocol, especially as it pertains to food?
Yeah. So great point, because I think this is the thing that is the biggest obstacle for most people. For us, we focused on just implementing one small actionable thing a week. That's kind of the way we tried doing it. And with the diet, I think Dr. Bredesen's team has done a great job of chunking it down into like phases. So the first thing we got to work on is fasting. Basically just making sure that we're fasting at least 3 hours between dinner and bedtime, so our insulin is low before we go to bed. Then figuring out how do we fast for at least 12 hours from dinner to breakfast. And then getting good at stretching that out a little bit more if you can to 14, 16 hours if possible. And then we start changing the diet. And like the first week we just said, okay, let's see if we can get good. Like, let's see if we can get good at just fasting from this time to this time at night. And it was easy. My mom is like, okay, kitchen's closed at, whatever, 6, 7, whatever it was. And, bed's at, 9 or 10. So, okay. And you got to have a good partner in that. You got to have a good caregiver in that, or a partner in crime that can help you kind of stay accountable to that. And then the next week was like, let's see if we can fast 12 hours. And then the next week it was like, okay, let's take all the processed food and throw it away. Like, let's not even have it in our orbit at all. And then we just worked on the next week on, we're not going to touch the carbs or the protein. Let's see if we can just up the fat. Like, let's see if you can. Let's do and we're big on at the time, Mary Newport, and let's get the coconut oil going. Let's get the MCT oil. And that in itself gave him a lot of confidence, because now he's got ketones pouring into his system. And whether you like it or not, whether you're adamant that this is not going to work or not, you're going to start feeling a buzz. And he was like, whoa, wow, this feels great. And then after that, at a couple of weeks, we started reducing the carbs so he could actually start getting into ketosis. So it wasn't like, hey, you're at like 200 carbs this week. Next week, we're going straight to 50, right? So we kind of just weaned them off, and we were doing it too. So, I went into ketosis for a year and started transitioning more to low carb. And, my mom was doing it, my brother was doing it. So it was a team effort.
That is an amazing way to approach it, first of all, and that's a great segue to the next question I was going to ask you. What about you? What happened in your life when you started playing with this? I know you guys kind of all did this together. Were you a bit surprised about the differences that you were feeling in your own life? And if so, what things changed for you?
Huge. It was big time. This has been a blessing. My dad signed up to do this really for us. He's always, he didn't want to do this at the beginning, right? He was in a bad mental and emotional state, and he kind of dug in to do this because he knew that it would give him the best shot of being functional for us, for my brother who was young at the time. But the way I convinced him to do it, I said, you're not going to do it alone, right? We're going to try this stuff with you. So he was like, let's do it. So it's always been a team effort. And I was always thinking about him, but as I'm doing it, I start doing it. I'm like, wow, at the time, I'm in my 20s and I think I'm invincible. And, I'm not watching what I eat. I'm not watching what I drink. I'm not watching whatever. But when I start practicing the protocol, and I practice it now for prevention because I happen to have the same gene my dad does. Um, I start practicing, it's like a whole new world opens up, and I'm like, wow, I've been tolerating such a low level of health and energy. And I really realized like how um, uh, just low energy I was allowing myself to be. And of course, when presented with this massive challenge, you kind of have to dig deep and gain a whole new level of performance. So it enabled me to kind of dig into that. And then once I stopped having the blood sugar swings, it's one of those, it's like you heard this thing, I'm probably gonna butcher it, but it's like, you know, there's fish in a fish tank. You say, how's the water in there? And they say, well, what's water, right? Because they have no idea. And that's how I was, right? I mean, um, when I start doing this and I start feeling so much better, I just I didn't realize um, how much more energy I could have. So, um, fast forward, I lost like 30 pounds. Um, at the time, I still CrossFit, and my performance in that got higher. Um, it took a step back for a second, like strength went down, like ketosis, like something as glycolytic as CrossFit. Just for anybody out there who's a CrossFitter, of course, doing it in ketosis, it was very tough for some of the strength-based stuff. For the aerobic stuff, it was great. So which is why I've moved over to more low carb, so I have some carbs on board for that. But as far as um, not having the blood sugar swings anymore and the emotional stuff that comes with that, they gave me an emotional resiliency to kind of help my dad better. Um, and it's helped me get to this point where I'm at right now, where now I know I have the gene. I'm 35. I've got 3 kids under the age of 5, and I got to help my dad. And hopefully I can keep helping other people too with dissemination of information. But, I have to put myself in the best position to continue to change our family tree so I can be there for my kids as well.
Yeah. Wow, I love hearing their stories. I never get sick of them. They're all very similar, and I know how people are going to answer them oftentimes, but I never get sick of hearing about it. I think the fish in the water is a great way to describe it. Like, a few weeks on carnivore, and I realized like I I must have had anxiety because my brain is so much more calm now. Like, but you didn't realize it when you were spinning around in all the problems that were never going to happen to you anyway. You don't notice it because it's like your baseline. So I
Yep.
love that. I think that's a great way to say it. Going back to collective, you mentioned being able to disseminate this information. You've got your amazing YouTube channel. You're involved with collective in a very impactful and meaningful way. You talked about what the mission and somewhat the vision for what collective is going to do. We want this to be frontline treatment. I do too. Not holding my breath. I want it to be done yesterday. Not holding my breath. It's a long-term goal. We're going to work towards it, and even if we don't ever achieve everything that we want, moving towards it is going to change lives, which is going to be amazing. I want to ask you what the vision is more in the short term.
Yeah.
We talked about, prioritizing things, and I think priority, the word itself, should always be framed in a singular version. When you start to get priorities, you're mixing too many things up. So what is the next step? What is collective wanting to do? What is the priority right now that you are trying to accomplish?
Yeah, great question. So for the remainder of this year, what we really want to do is harness the current community that we have uh, to help support groups. And really, we'd like to see at least a handful of well-led support groups that start off as being, digital virtual ones for education and community around anyone who has um, a mental illness. And we're going to start the neurological stuff is going to come off the back of this. There's already, Metabolic Mind has already done a great job of disseminating information and getting ketogenic therapies and the power of that into the hands of those who already have mental illness diagnosed and are looking for better answers and looking for better outcomes. It's not always about a cure, it's not always about a remission, all that. It's about better outcomes. It's about elevating quality of life no matter what label's been tagged on you, right? So, um, we really want to be able to build support groups this year that can successfully uh, attract and also support people through education and community who have a mental illness diagnosed and they want to try out some of these ketogenic therapies. And part of that is it's powerful to see the testimony of people who've already have done it or are doing it. So part of the collective is housing many of these great testimonies who can also be mentors to others. So right now in the short term, that's what we're focused on because we see that as more people can come in and can just start working on this in their life, just like you said, just like I said, like you, this stuff just it unsuspectedly it creeps up on you. Like you change your diet for a couple of weeks or even a few days sometimes, and you feel such a difference that when enough people can experience that, we can start getting movement because um, I didn't have the intention to start brain health, and I didn't have the but what happens is that when you start making a shift in your life, other people notice, they ask you, and then all of a sudden the information just spreads that much more. So that's kind of where we are short term. We want to launch these groups. We want these groups to successfully support others and to attract more to come into these groups for it to be a vibrant ecosystem that's really running parallel to what's already out there. Because what's already out there is there isn't really that support. So if you've been diagnosed with something, you have your relationship with your clinician, and that's it. And most people feel isolated outside of that relationship. So just creating community and building that robust ecosystem and inviting as many people in.
That's amazing. If I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, wow, this is amazing, I would love to get involved. What is the next step for that person?
Yeah, no, for Metabolic Collective, you can go on, we'll link it on the show notes probably, but www.metaboliccollective.org. I think I'm saying that right, maybe it's com. But we'll link it on there. And you'll see on the first page there, get involved, I believe, or volunteer. You'll see that on there. And just click on that and you can fill out a really brief form and you'll be able to see how you can get involved, how you can help out or join a support group. We've got some socials. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. So there's ways to reach us, and it's pretty easy. So if you're looking for community, if you're looking for learning about ketogenic therapies and how you can start, or if you're looking to reach out to someone who's already been down the same road that you want to go through, there's ways to reach out to us. But yeah, I'd say just go to the website and click on there, and we'll get you connected with someone.
It's fantastic. This has been a really special conversation. I've really enjoyed chatting with you and learning about your story. Um, again, I see a lot of groups and ways that people try to help organizations. Some have come, some have gone. When I heard about this one, I was really optimistic about it. And the more and more time goes by, the more even more optimistic I'm getting. You guys are doing amazing work. I love hearing about how the team is coming together, ideas are being shared. It's going to do amazing things, and I think it's so cool what you guys are doing and what you're involved with, and very excited to see where it goes in the future. For now, I'm just excited for you, the life you get to live, the energy you get to have, the impact that you had, with your father, with your family in particular, the future that you and your young kids are going to have together. It's pretty cool to see, and I'm really grateful for all the amazing work that you do and for sharing your story with us today. Eddie, one more time, where can people go to find the collective? Where can they go to find you and connect with you and your work as well, including your YouTube channel?
Yeah, so for the collective, www.metaboliccollective.org, and then we'll have that linked on there. For me, for brain health, you can look it up on YouTube. I was a knucklehead when I did it. It's really hard to find. You're gonna have to do BrainHeal underscore TH underscore. You can search it that way. We'll probably link that on there too. But I'm on Facebook or other socials, Twitter. Um, but yeah, you can find me on there, and hopefully it's helpful, and people can take away something that they can kind of put into action in their life that same day.
Yeah, I love it. Well, the channel is amazing. I think the name is brilliant. I thought it was really clever the way you did that. So I think it's great. We will link everything in the show notes so people can find it anyway. But Eddie, yeah, I've really appreciated this conversation. I appreciated our time together. So thank you for everything you do, and thank you for taking time out of your day to be on our show today.
I really appreciate it, Casey, and I thank you for everything you're doing. You got an awesome channel yourself. I've been a fan for a while here, so I'm really honored that you asked me to come on, and yeah, looking forward to connecting down the road. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's do it for sure. This was really fun. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.